Walking outside on a clear day, it is easy to assume the ground beneath your feet and the air in your lungs are permanent fixtures. Earth feels like a finished, stable paradise that will host oceans and forests indefinitely. But planetary geology tells a different story. Earth has a finite total life-bearing window, estimated by climate models to last roughly 4.8 to 5.2 billion years in total. Because our planet formed over 4.5 billion years ago and life appeared shortly after, roughly 70 to 80% of that total habitable window has already passed. That 70% metric applies to any form of life, including extreme heat-tolerant microbes. When we isolate the window for complex, oxygen-dependent animals like us, the time we have left shrinks down to a much thinner slice. To understand why this biological clock is ticking and what exactly will trigger the end of complex life, we have to rewind and look at what this planet was doing exactly 1 billion years ago. We are not living on a permanent sanctuary. We are currently passing through a highly dynamic, fragile middle chapter of biological complexity. 1 billion years ago, the continents were mostly barren rock, devoid of recognizable plants or animals. Below the surface, much of the deep ocean was anoxic, meaning it contained virtually no dissolved oxygen. This chart compares the atmosphere then versus now. Today, oxygen makes up 20.9% of the air we breathe. Back then, it hovered at roughly 1 to 2% of current levels, nearly 100 times lower. Free oxygen is not something a planet naturally keeps around. It reacts quickly with iron and volcanic gases, and it only accumulates if something manufactures it. For eons, photosynthetic microorganisms and marine algae served as that engine, constantly dividing and releasing oxygen as a byproduct. Eventually, those biological engines pumped out enough oxygen to support highly active multicellular ecosystems. This atmospheric shift paved the way for the Cambrian explosion, laying down the body architectures for animals like trilobites and later vertebrates. Every bird, mammal, and human relies entirely on a delicate layer of gas that took billions of years for microbes to build. But the environment supporting this complex web of life relies on a very specific energy balance. As our sun burns through its hydrogen fuel, it slowly grows about 10% brighter every billion years. This chart shows solar radiation increasing over deep time. The rising heat accelerates silicate weathering, where rainwater reacts with rocks, pulling carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere and locking it in minerals. Traditional forests rely on high levels of carbon dioxide to photosynthesize. As CO2 crashes, those ecosystems will starve. The last standing vegetation will look like modern deserts, dominated by succulents and specialized plants that have adapted to hoard scarce carbon and conserve water. When the global plant base shrinks, the animal food web collapses with it. Without vast forests and grasslands to consume, large warm-blooded herbivores will starve, taking apex predators down shortly after. The evolutionary pressure will favor intense conservation. The animals that manage to survive this contraction will likely be small invertebrates or reptiles with extremely low metabolic demands, relying on nocturnal behavior and burrowing to escape the blistering surface heat. We are looking at a line graph modeling Earth's future oxygen cycle. When plant productivity drops below a critical threshold, estimated at roughly 1.08 billion years from now, the system snaps. Atmospheric oxygen goes into a freefall, plummeting back toward that ancient 1% mark. This oxygen loss also dismantles the ozone layer. Without that shield, the surface is bathed in lethal levels of ultraviolet radiation. Early in Earth's history, a weaker sun required a thick greenhouse atmosphere just to keep the oceans from freezing solid. Now, that increasing solar heat is exactly what will dismantle the biosphere. As temperatures continue to soar, the oceans will evaporate and retreat. The last remnants of complex animal life will vanish, leaving the scorched surface to the only organisms tough enough to handle it, stress-tolerant microbes. The deep future of this planet is nearly identical to its deep past. 1 billion years from now, Earth will once again be a hot, barren, microbial world under an oxygen-starved sky. So where do humans fit into a timeline this fast? 1 billion years is more than 3,000 times the entire history of our species. We know that mammalian physiology has rigid limits. You cannot simply acclimate a biological human to an atmosphere that contains only 1% oxygen. We would suffocate. To survive a deep time event like this, our descendants would have to direct their own evolution. That means utilizing profound synthetic biology, engineering artificial organs, or migrating entirely into sealed, technologically sustained environments, independent of the dying planet below. Long before the oxygen cycle breaks, humanity will have either gone extinct or evolved into a form of life entirely unrecognizable to us today. Recognizing that our planet has an expiration date doesn't make our time here meaningless. Knowing that Earth is a dynamic, temporary spaceship highlights exactly how rare and privileged this era of complex life truly is. We happen to exist during the most beautiful chapter of the story.